When people hear Mike Trout speak in hushed tones about decisions he never made, it feels like pulling back a curtain that was never meant to be opened. In the whispers around the league, the idea that he once considered the Dodgers but ultimately stepped away has become one of those stories that grows every time it is told. Trout, a central figure in modern baseball, carries an aura of calm professionalism. Yet those close to him say there was frustration beneath the surface. The rumor goes that when the Dodgers' name appeared in conversations, it was not excitement that dominated his thoughts, but caution. He allegedly felt the offer structure reflected a philosophy that undervalued stability and loyalty, something Trout has always prioritized. In these speculative conversations, the salary was perceived as lower than expected for a player of his stature, not just in raw money, but in symbolic respect. To a competitor who has earned multiple league honors and has been the face of a franchise, that kind of message matters deeply. As a YouTube narrator would say, this was not about chasing glamour. It was about understanding where he would truly be heard and protected as a leader. In the background of these rumors, the Dodgers are painted not as villains, but as a machine that sometimes forgets the human element. Trout, according to speculation, sensed a lack of clear leadership hierarchy that would allow him to be himself. He is known as a quiet leader, someone who leads through consistency rather than speeches, and the whispers suggest he feared being lost in a crowded room of stars. The Dodgers, in this telling, seemed like a place where voices overlap, where direction comes from many angles, and where a player like Trout might feel more like a piece than a pillar. This is not criticism, but perception, and perception often guides decisions more than facts. The talk around clubhouses says Trout wanted a team where leadership was defined, where accountability flowed from the top down, and where his presence would not need to compete for oxygen. In this speculative narrative, the Dodgers' internal dynamics raise questions that never found comfortable answers. Another layer of the rumor touches on money, not as greed, but as validation. Trout has always been portrayed as someone who values respect over flash. Yet respect in professional sports is often communicated through contracts. The alleged offer, while still impressive to most, supposedly did not align with his sense of worth. People close to the situation whisper that it felt calculated, efficient, almost cold. For a player who has given everything to the game, including enduring injuries and constant pressure, that tone matters. In the imagined conversations, Trout is said to have asked himself whether a slightly smaller paycheck also meant a smaller voice. Would he be empowered to influence culture, or would he simply be expected to perform and stay silent? This speculation paints a picture of a man weighing legacy against convenience, wondering if a famous logo was worth sacrificing the feeling of being central to a mission. Leadership, or the perceived lack of it, continues to dominate these speculative discussions. Trout has spent years in environments where responsibility often fell on his shoulders by default. The idea that he might walk into another situation without a clear captaincy structure was unsettling. According to rumors, he wanted a front office that spoke with one voice, a coaching staff that set a clear tone, and a roster that understood roles without constant negotiation. The Dodgers, in this narrative, appeared powerful but diffuse, strong but scattered. For a player who thrives on routine and clarity, that ambiguity was a red flag. This does not mean chaos, but rather a complexity that might distract from the simple joy of playing baseball at the highest level. In whispered retellings, Trout chose peace of mind over prestige. The Angels, by contrast, are often described in these rumors as familiar ground. Not perfect, not always successful, but known. Trout allegedly felt that staying put allowed him to maintain control over his environment, his preparation, and his influence. He understood the challenges, the limitations, and the expectations. In a league where uncertainty is constant, familiarity can be a powerful anchor. The speculative narrative suggests that Trout valued the ability to shape something rather than adapt to something already shaped. The Dodgers represented a finished product, while the Angels represented an ongoing project. For a player who takes pride in building as much as performing, that difference was significant. As YouTube commentators like to say, This story is less about rejection and more about self-awareness. The rumor that Trout openly said he did not go to the Dodgers because of lower salary and unclear leadership resonates, because it feels human. It frames him not as a superstar chasing headlines, but as a professional making a deeply personal choice. Whether every detail is true matters less than what the story represents. It suggests that even at the highest level, players are guided by values, comfort, and trust. And in this speculative tale, the Dodgers simply did not offer the version of those things that Trout was willing to accept. When the conversation shifts to legacy, the rumors surrounding Trout's decision take on a deeper tone. People around the game like to imagine him sitting quietly, replaying scenarios, thinking not just about contracts, but about how history would remember his choices. The Dodgers, with their massive spotlight, could have amplified his fame, but whispers say Trout feared becoming another chapter rather than the story itself. In these speculative retellings, he wondered whether joining such a powerful brand would dilute his identity. He has always been more substance than spectacle, and the idea of constant comparison within a star-filled roster may have felt exhausting. The Angels, despite their struggles, allowed him to remain singular. This rumor-driven narrative paints Trout as someone who understands that greatness is not only measured by trophies, but by the consistency of one's presence and principles. Another aspect that fuels these whispers is the emotional connection Trout has with leadership styles. He reportedly values leaders who listen more than they speak, who set examples rather than issue commands. The Dodgers, in this speculative lens, were seen as highly structured, perhaps overly corporate. That environment works for many, but for Trout, it may have felt restrictive. The rumor suggests he did not want to be molded. He wanted to collaborate. This distinction is subtle but important. In the imagined dialogue, Trout's camp questioned whether his input would truly matter or simply be acknowledged politely. For someone who has earned respect through years of excellence, being heard is not a luxury. It is an expectation. Salary continues to surface in these stories, not as the headline, but as a symbol. The alleged lower offer was interpreted as a sign of how the organization viewed him within their ecosystem. Was he a transformative figure or just another elite asset? In speculative commentary, Trout reportedly leaned toward environments where commitment is mutual and visible. A contract is a promise, and if that promise feels cautious, it can raise doubts about long-term trust. This rumor-driven perspective suggests that Trout equated financial terms with emotional investment. He wanted to feel chosen, not negotiated down. In a league where numbers often speak louder than words, that difference can define careers. The YouTube-style retelling often emphasizes how Trout's quiet nature can be misunderstood. Some assume silence equals passivity, but those who know him describe a fierce internal compass. The speculation says that compass pointed away from the Dodgers not because of fear, but because of clarity. He knew what he wanted and what he could tolerate. A team without a clear leadership core, even one filled with talent, did not align with his vision. This rumor portrays Trout as a guardian of his own balance, someone unwilling to sacrifice mental peace for external approval. In a sport that demands relentless focus, that balance is priceless. There is also talk about how Trout views responsibility. Staying with the Angels meant embracing challenges rather than escaping them. The speculative narrative frames this as a conscious choice to face adversity head-on. Joining the Dodgers might have offered comfort in numbers, but it also might have allowed him to hide when things went wrong. Trout, according to these whispers, did not want that. He wanted accountability to be unavoidable. This paints a picture of a competitor who measures himself not against others, but against his own standards. It is a romantic interpretation, perhaps, but one that fans eagerly embrace. In the end, this rumor-filled story is less about one team and more about identity. Mike Trout's alleged words about why he did not go to the Dodgers echo, because they challenge common assumptions. Not every star wants the brightest lights. Not every champion seeks the biggest stage. Sometimes the choice is about feeling valued, understood, and empowered. Whether every detail is accurate may never be confirmed, but the narrative persists because it feels true to who Trout appears to be. For a YouTube audience, this kind of story is irresistible, blending speculation with insight and reminding us that behind every headline decision, there's a human being weighing far more than just wins and losses. The second half of this rumor-driven story dives deeper into the emotional logic people believe guided Trout's thinking, and this is where the narrative really hooks fans. According to whispers passed from one locker room to another, Trout did not see the Dodgers as a dream destination, but as a test of his priorities. In this speculative version, he allegedly questioned whether joining such a polished organization would strip away the simplicity that keeps him grounded. Trout has always been described as a player who loves routine, familiarity, and a sense of belonging that grows over time. The Dodgers, with their constant expectations and rotating spotlight, may have felt like a place where comfort is temporary and pressure is permanent. This rumor suggests he feared becoming emotionally disconnected from the game itself, turning baseball into an obligation instead of a passion. For someone who has carried the weight of being a franchise symbol, the idea of losing joy was more frightening than any criticism. This is the kind of internal struggle fans rarely see but love to imagine. Another angle often repeated by commentators is how Trout supposedly evaluated leadership not just on paper, but in daily behavior. The Dodgers, in this speculative tale, were seen as a team with many leaders but no single emotional anchor. Trout, who leads quietly by showing up every day and performing at a high level, may have worried that his style would clash with an environment full of strong personalities and shifting influence. The rumor claims he wanted clarity, not competition, when it came to leadership roles. He was not looking to dominate a clubhouse, but to feel aligned with it. In this imagined scenario, he sensed that alignment might be harder to achieve in Los Angeles. The story frames this not as fear, but as emotional intelligence, recognizing where one truly fits instead of forcing a situation to work. Money, once again, appears in this narrative as a reflection of philosophy rather than desire. The speculative accounts insist that Trout did not feel insulted by a lower financial proposal, but intrigued by what it represented. He allegedly interpreted it as a signal that the organization believed it could win without fully centering its future around him. For many players, that would be acceptable, even appealing. For Trout, whose career has been built on being the foundation rather than the accessory, it raised doubts. This rumor suggests he wanted a partnership, not a transaction. He wanted to feel essential, not interchangeable. In a sport increasingly driven by analytics and efficiency, this emotional reading of a contract offer feels almost old-fashioned, which only adds to its appeal among fans. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. The speculative story also paints Trout as someone deeply aware of how narratives shape legacies. Joining the Dodgers might have rewritten his story in ways he could not control. Wins would be shared, failures diffused, and individual impact harder to measure. Staying put, even through struggle, kept his narrative clean and personal. According to the rumor, Trout preferred a path where responsibility was unmistakable. If things went wrong, there would be no hiding. If things went right, the satisfaction would be deeper. This perspective casts him as a player who values meaning over convenience, even when convenience is wrapped in prestige and popularity. As the rumor continues to circulate, fans and analysts alike frame Trout's alleged decision as a quiet statement against the modern rush towards super teams. In this imagined context, he chose continuity over consolidation, identity over accumulation. The Dodgers symbolize efficiency and ambition, while the Angels represent familiarity and emotional investment. Trout, in this telling, leaned toward the latter because it matched his internal compass. This does not mean he rejected ambition, but rather that he defined it differently. His ambition was not just to win, but to belong, to lead authentically, and to stay true to himself in a sport that often pulls players away from their roots. Ultimately, this speculative second part reinforces why the story resonates so strongly. Mike Trout is not portrayed as a hero or a rebel, but as a thoughtful professional navigating impossible choices. The rumor that he avoided the Dodgers due to salary concerns and unclear leadership survives because it feels plausible, even poetic. It reminds fans that behind contracts and logos are human values, fears, and hopes. For a YouTube audience hungry for depth beyond highlights, this kind of narrative is powerful. It turns a simple non-move into a reflection on loyalty, identity, and what success truly means in modern baseball. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.